Hello and welcome back to another video. As you guessed it from the title, this is another tier list. We are going to be looking at Pacific. And for that very reason, I've got myself a wonderful guest. No, it's not Bambino. It is Bigtime.
Hello, hello. It's always a pleasure. You gotta love Pacific. I gotta love ranking them. It's gonna be fun.
Now, I will say, off the rip, you're not allowed to put G at the top. Because, of course, you were ex-GE, ex-assistant coach, right? That's the title? Or were you analyst?
I was assistant coach.
Assistant coach. Okay. Let's, you know what? Let's get right into things. Similarly to what we did with the EMEA one, we're just going to be going through each of the teams, talking about what we think is good about them. I have bought Bigtime into this because I'll be honest, when it comes to the tier 2 of EMEA, I watched all of it. When it comes to the tier 2 of Pacific, I'm not going to say I watched none of it, but that might also be the truth. So we're going to be kicking off with Boom. And obviously this is a team that kind of got brought in as like a last minute addition. I'm interested to hear your thoughts because I believe they also made one change, or was it more than one change off rip?
Yeah, I think it was one change, and they changed the coach as well. But they brought in DOS9, who I worked with on Revenant during the kind of Ascension run. I do think DOS9 in particular, I can speak on him more than the others because I watched him, I coached him, and I think he's an incredibly talented player. He's very young, and I think he has a lot to give as he heads up to tier 1. I think he will have a lot of impact for this team, and I can see him doing a lot of work. As for the team overall, it's sort of harder to grade them, to be honest. Like you say, they didn't win Ascension, which is like, they got in through other means, through the downfall of Bleed. But if you look at their semi-final game against, the final game against SPG, SPG were heavily touted as the favorites for the whole event from the start. They were near flawless. They were insanely clean the whole way through the Korean League and all the way through Ascension and until this final, where Boom really pushed it. So I think if you rate SPG, which a lot of people do, you do kind of have to rate Boom because they pushed them all the way. There was, there's a little crowd buff that the Ascension was in Indonesia and Boom were there. But I do think this is a team that still has... This is so difficult. I think they have to be in the bottom half. Just because I think they have a lot to prove.
This is called top half, so that means you're talking these two tiers.
Yeah, I think it has to be one of those two. I mean, it's such a shame because I really like them all. I think they're really great.
Right, so you're on the fence. They're going in the bottom. I can already tell. He's so on the fence about it that they have to be going in the bottom tier.
Man, this is difficult. I think Battle of the Bottom is fair, but I do think they're a sort of dark horse. I could see them having very good runs, deep playoff
when
runs,
you say dark horse, do you mean dark horse for here? Or because the thing is, I don't think someone if you put them in the bottom tier, I don't think they're a dark horse. Like that'd be for anything. That's the difficult thing, because if you think they're a dark horse to make it international, they have to be somewhere a bit higher. But I kind of agree with you. I think an Ascension team coming up, and even if they did make drastic changes, I think bringing in one player, it in most cases is not going to be enough. I think maybe they can make a little bit of a run and make it to like a playoff stage at some point. But I would, by default, put them here. Obviously, this is the first team, so we are allowed to move things around. And I think the next team is actually another one that sort of really interests me because DFM, you look back to last year, the year before, it didn't exactly go fantastically well. I think May was definitely a standout, someone that was really highlighted. So what they've decided to do, and I will say I quite like this, is just basically tank the whole roster and just keep May, which I don't really think it's arguable that, at least from the very recent results, like seeing them play in some of the off-season tournaments, they've actually looked pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think it was the right move. I think DFM as an organization can't be happy. Playoffs 2 years in a row, so big changes were needed, and that's very fair. But I will say I'm quite excited for this new iteration of DFM. I mean, they beat Paper X, they beat RRQ, they beat EDG in the off season. It is the off season, so you gotta, you have to take it with a little pinch of salt.
Yeah.
But it shows potential, right? The fact that these players are able to go toe-to-toe with the PRX players and the RRQ players, which are, very highly rated teams in Pacific, shows a level of quality. I do think the fact May managed to stand out so much while being on such a low placing team
Yeah.
speaks to his level as well. And they also brought in Jinbung, who I really think I think he's a very, very good player. I remember scrimming against him for all of 2024, and he was very, very strong. He was with SLT and Sengoku, I think. I've seen him play.
Yeah.
And he was very, very good. I think he always does well in the ranked leaderboards. He's a bit of a grinder, so he's somebody to watch out for. I think I always liked going against that guy. He was very good at punishing your mistakes. I think he's a great addition. I think the rest of the supporting cast around May, and then positive strides in the off season, showing their own level, showing that they can, go toe to toe with these teams and get some green on VLR for a change. Like, I think I got to put them in the top half.
Okay. I know what, I already like it. I don't want to argue with it because I know that I think a lot of people after recent performances are quite high on them. So I will see. I'm going to leave it there because it's a top 6. So I am sticking. It has to be 6. There's no one going higher. So we'll see if you need to move anyone down a little bit later on. And then I think a team that, for me at least, has gone in the other direction. You got DRX. Now DRX, again, like I think it's 2 years back to back where we've sort of seen them make some pretty drastic changes. They've lost so many of those sort of superstar players, like Buzz now gone, Stack's now gone as well. I think is like, it's wild. It doesn't even look like a DRX anymore. But then also the only players remaining are Marco and Flashback. Like everybody else has also left the team, some even moving to rivals. Of the new players, is there anybody that sort of like sticks out to you as, I don't know, someone you scrimmed, someone you noted that you think actually, okay, that is a good pickup?
Yeah, I think Freeing is very, very good. When he did with Rare Atom, the Ascension run he had with Rare Atom was very strong. I remember watching those games. I feel like he was on Clove. I remember distinctly a map of him on Clove where he was just going crazy. He was just absolutely destroying the whole lobby. I watched all of their run through Ascension in China, and Freeing was a real highlight of that team. He really stood out as being a very, very strong player.
I'm guessing it was this map.
Yeah, that's the one. 30. Look at that, 39 kills in a 13-7 win.
That's actually crazy. What the hell?
I think I watched that map.
His
live.
Neon had 4 kills as well.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter. You have a Clove with 520 ACS going plus 23. The game is unlosable. Like that guy is drowning in raw potential. So okay. I think the thing about DRX is like I'm on board with you where I don't like these changes as much as the old roster, but with the old roster just kind of bigger names and it's fizzled out. But equally, I think even last year when they made the changes to bring in Flashback, Foxy9 and Bayon, everybody said the same things then. Everybody was sort of doubting them then. It was like, oh, is this it? Is this the end of the DRX era? And they still managed to have a strong year, So I think DRX is one of those teams where I find it hard to doubt them and doubt their system. Like they have the way their like academy system works is insane. They have a huge academy. Basically, if anybody's talented in Korea and young, they sign them to the academy. So they just have the pick of the next up and coming players all the time.
Yeah. They also have 85 coaches to help them as well. So
very true. Like, I think it's hard for me to imagine a world where DRX isn't in the top half, no matter what they do. I think just the way the org is run, the way the coaches operate.
I'm so excited for who's not making the top half now that DFM is in there.
This is going to be so difficult. You got me stressed out, Tom.
So where are they going? Are they going top half or are they going make it international?
Okay, I think go top half for now, but I mean, I could see them making an international, so there's a chance they move up.
Okay, well, let's, we'll leave them there for now. You are putting teams in the middle, except Boom. Clearly you hate Boom. But we've got so nice. Gen.G. Now, Gen.G, another team where incredible year. They've still got some of their superstars. But again, and the big one for me is Meteor. Like, I don't know. I know that obviously, clearly, I think some of it might have been financial, that they had to, they couldn't re-sign everybody to better contracts. But letting Meteor go and seeing him play in T1 has made me think they made the wrong choice, whatever it was they did. And also their off-season has definitely looked a little bit shakier.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think the Gen.G of 2024 was absolutely unstoppable. They were a beast of a team. And it's a real shame they weren't able to keep that roster together. I think we would have seen real dominance from them if they had more time together, like carrying through into this year. But obviously, it's not the way contracts work. Yada yada. But yeah, it's hard for me to say I'm as high on them as they were. I don't get me wrong. This is the thing. I still think they're very, very good though. Like Texture has showed massive potential last year. He was utterly dominant internationally. Caron, the ranked demon, like those would I would say were the two main pieces of Gen.G. But it's also easy to say that because those were the two like sort of highest fraggers. They were the most in your face about it. But I do think those were both very strong. Obviously, bringing Foxy9 in as well. Like he's been a great player for a long time. DRX as a young player.
But I feel like that's the thing though. I feel like Foxy9 is inconsistent. Like I think that's the biggest problem with him, and I think that at least from all the times I watched him, he feels like someone who's a duelist who is now being forced into Sentinel and doesn't really have the same level. And it's also difficult as well because you're comparing him to Meteor. He is not close. Like, I think that's the problem I have is you've slotted him into a role where ultimately last time you had a guy who was winning your championships and now you have a guy who was sort of one of the weaker pieces, in my opinion, of DRX. So that's a fairly clear downgrade. And then Yeoman, I'll be honest, I don't know too much about. He was on not the current RedForce that was Sinpresa Gaming. He was on the RedForce before that, which I actually don't know where they went out. They lost to Sinpresa, so I guess it's not an awful position.
Yeah, but it is still sort of like an interesting pickup in a way. It's not somebody I would have expected to go straight to Gen.G, to be honest. I was really expecting Gen.G to be spending big, and try and keep this kind of dominant. So when we look at them, placing them in the tier list, I mean, you start. Where would you put them?
The thing is, I still have a lot of faith in Tech. I think for me the only logical place is here. I don't think they could win it all. But I think that they could make an international. I think they have good enough players that maybe not the 2-team one like at kickoff, but I would say maybe as a third place team, that's where I'd put them. And in my mind, there's two teams that clearly go above them.
Yeah.
So I think making an international is viable. I would say winning it all, probably not.
Yeah, I can't see them winning it all. I could see them making an international. Yeah. Man, I want to watch them play a lot more. I think I watched them in the off season, but I feel like I don't have enough information.
Yeah, they also lost to DRX, so you know.
They did. This is the thing is I feel like this will be a real test for Solo and HSK as coaches because obviously they came in, they changed everything. Like you look at how Gen.G played, they really reformed it. They sort of changed what Korean Valorant was. So I'm really interested to see how that holds over to this new team. I think if they manage to recreate what was so special about that last Gen.G team in the levels of like aggression and freedom, but also intricate utility, if they manage to sort of copy that across to 2025, then I feel like they have the pieces that they need to sort of do it again very strong again.
Okay.
But it's a very tough balance of how much of it was a sort of strong system and how much of it was just brilliant players. So it's something that will unfold throughout the year, I suppose. But let's leave them there for now. I think we could always tweak that later.
Now it makes me sound like you want to move them down, but I'm not. We'll see. Global Esports.
I was going to move them. Okay.
Global Esports. We'll get to them.
So for Global, I really like the pickups that they made in this offseason, to be honest. They had a lot of time. From the start, they ran big open trials. I think that's a very good way to find players. I think Crystal is obviously someone who you have to look to on this team. He's won 2 Ascensions, unless I'm mistaken, which is kind of an insane thing to do and not.
I feel like the nuts thing for me is that he joins the Chinese organization knowing that if he wins, he gets dropped. And that was like written from my understanding, written from the beginning that they would keep Raga and drop him because they're only allowed 1 player.
I didn't realize that was sort of a predetermined thing because I remember when they made Ascension, I was really sure that they were going to keep Crystal. I thought,
maybe I made that up, but I'm pretty sure I remember somewhere hearing that was like they knew that was the case.
Right.
Maybe not, but like he had such an like your initiator. I think that was it. I think I asked like someone at GE because I was just like, how did you get him? Because in my mind, it's like even if he doesn't stay, I feel like someone would have had to pay big bucks, and that probably means that GE did pay big bucks because I think that he could have played in EMEA as well. Very easy slot in, obviously a CIS player, but. Yeah, that for me is a huge pickup. The rest I am more intrigued about because they're players that I think are decent. I don't know it's whether or not they light the world on fire, I guess, because I think expectations in G are always that they are here.
Mm-hmm.
No offense. I've realized that you were on the team every year that every year up until now.
I get it.
But I do look at a lot of these players, and also from speaking to Juvenile, who I think is a very convincing man, I kind of at minimum want to put them here. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I think I would agree with you in playoffs at best. I think, obviously, I had slightly more kind of insider information on what was kind of happening last year and in 2023. And I do think the organization is pushing a lot harder to make that playoffs to try and make the international events, and it shows in the roster that they've been able to build. I think they have a strong roster. The other person that sticks out in this roster for me is Pappy. I remember scrimming against this guy when he was on Nous, I think it was, and he was very strong. He always seemed like the strongest player on, from my biased opinion. And I always was kind of surprised that he wasn't going to Team Secret. He wasn't getting called up sooner. So I think he's a really solid pickup. I think he'll have a good year along with Crystal. I definitely know less about the others, so I'm a bit more intrigued to see how they play out. But I do see this being a playoff level team if everything goes well.
I remember Juvenile was very, very high on Patrick Patrick Watson, as he was previously called, or Yokam, as I was calling him throughout the entirety of the interview. He said that this guy is something special, but he also said that a lot of it was down to how he played on Neon, which seems to be getting a nerf before we'll ever see him play. So that'll be interesting. I also love that it says Velocity when he literally didn't play a single match. But never mind.
It does feel like harsh in a way to put them above Boom when they played. Those two teams played a best of 3 against each other, and Boom won it.
The thing is, only 8 teams can go in the top half. We can move them down, and this is the thing. I have a feeling our heart is going to put them here, and then we're going to go through the rest of the teams, and we're going to put them here anyway. But
I really don't want to do that.
Let's leave them here for now. And we'll, when we get there, which we inevitably will, we'll do it without anybody noticing. So
I see a World Global in playoffs a lot easier than I do Boom. So I think I'm happy.
Okay, for now it's fine. But again, there still has to be a few of these other teams that have to go down there. So we'll see. Next up, we have got the guys over at RedForce, or Nongshim RedForce, which you told me is a brand of noodles.
Yep, it's a very popular ramen brand.
I did not know that.
Korea.
I love that somebody's gonna go, like, if they're at the event in Korea, they're gonna go and cheer for noodles. I just think that's fantastic. But obviously, that is basically just the Simpreza gaming team that obviously won it.
Now, from my experience with these guys, I find it very hard to not put them in the top half.
Okay.
Just look at their VLR page for a second. Go back to it. And just look at how much green is on here. They just keep winning. They kept winning. They win so much.
Yeah, that's the 18th of January, the last time. that's kind of crazy.
They were so dominant in Korea, and they came to Ascension, and they were so dominant the whole way through, right up until the final. I do think their final against the previous Nongshim RedForce team was 3-2 as well. So I do think there might be a sort of nerves issue, a kind of confidence issue when it gets to the grand final. Obviously, things are much closer, and that's happened twice.
Okay.
But I do think in terms of quality of player, these guys are absolutely insane. I remember scrimming against them all year, and it was like, this is a small anecdote, but talking like near the start of the season in 2024, early, January, before kickoff type thing, and we played against these guys, and I never heard of any of them, and they absolutely lit us up, and we were like, oh my goodness, what's going wrong? We're getting beat by a Korean Premier team. That's what they were. I'd never heard of these players. They come from Overwatch, I know that now, but I remember just looking them up and being like, oh no, what's gone wrong? And then we kept playing them throughout the year, and like we got better, they got better. But I think you ask anybody who scrimmed against these guys in 2024, and they'll want them high up the tier list as well. They were notoriously good to play in scrims. And then obviously when I was with Revenant in Ascension, we played against them. We got beat 2-0, but we were 7-0 up. That's a separate story. That's a separate story. But I put a lot of work into anti-stratting them for that game.
How'd that go?
Well, you can see. But I remember watching how they play, and they were to me, they strike me as very sort of old school Korean. It's very formulaic, a lot of. It's very aggressive. It's incredibly in your face. It's still APAC Valorant, but it's so well drilled. It's so well thought out, and they love taking risks more than any other team. Like, they started just towards the end of halves and stuff. They started stacking like 4 people on one bomb site and just sitting 4 people on one site. It's like, that's such a strange thing to do. You would never normally see that, but then you just try and hit a site that you've heard no noise on, and there's 4 people there, and you're like, this doesn't make any sense. And I do think that Danby was amazing on Neon. Obviously, the Neon nerf is hitting, so I want to see the rest of his pool a little bit. But when I first saw his Neon, he was the one that made me go, this agent is absolutely busted. Get his nerf right now. Sliding around with the bookie. But I think they have to at least be top half. They could even make an international.
Okay, because that's the thing. I'll say that when it comes to Pacific Ascension, I'm definitely a little bit ignorant, but I always have that thing in the back of my head where I go, you can be the best of Ascension, but a lot of the time that's not enough to make it in the tier 1, but you believe that this team is, even without changes, will be the real deal.
I think so. From what I saw of them in scrims all throughout 2024, they were very impressive. And I think a lot of the other coaches and players, especially who were from the league last year, who had to scrim against this SPG team, will say the same thing. I think they very much are the real deal in how they played. It's very structured. It's very fundamentally solid. So I think a lot of it will transfer across to to tier 1 if they manage this transition properly. So I think leave them in top half for now, but I could see them moving up, to be honest.
Okay. Well, for me, there's 2 teams that are definitely, and we will have to move one of these teams up anyway, because 4 teams are guaranteed to make an international. So just on the math alone, someone's moving up. PaperX. I feel like by default they're hero here. I don't think a massive conversation needs to be had around it. I'm just curious. Do you put them in could win it all or makes an international?
I would put them in could win it all. But
okay.
Like for me, it's PaperX. Like, they're always on top of this region. PaperX always have this sort of innate advantage because they're just so horrible to play against. It's so disgusting loading into a server across from them when they're playing a comp that you've never seen in your whole life. And you're like, well, how does this even work? And then they run at you and they shoot you in the face faster and harder than anybody's ever done to you in practice. And they're able to do this with everyone. Their style is so unique that it's so difficult to play against. It really is their edge, is the fact that
it was recently as well when they just started playing the default Ascent comp, and that blew everyone's mind. They were like, what the fuck are they doing?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. They picked default, and then there's the clip of like they droned, and then they all properly cleared angles, and everybody's losing their mind. And it's like, oh no, they've learned how to clear corners. And
I'll also say,
solid.
If Jing had got 1 more kill, this would have been the most mind-blowing. Like the fact that they all had 16 kills as well. I think people would have thought this game was rigged. But yeah, I don't think it's too much of a story to say we're going to put PaperX at the top. Like, even when they had like good form or bad form, they still made every single international. It was just how much damage they actually did at it. They made, top 3, losing to Sentinels in Madrid. And then after that, it was a little bit underwhelming for the rest of the year. But it's one of those things where that's the expectation on this team. They don't really need to reinvent themselves because they do that every map. Like, again, you look back to their finals, they're still, testing different things out. So I think that's an easy one. RRQ is a little bit more interesting because, again, for me, there's one team that's already going in this top 6. So that means by default, this has to be here or here, and I'm not sure I agree with that.
I can't get down with that. To me, they make an international.
Oh, okay then. So who's going down?
I feel like I'm gonna have to adjust after, but I need to make the case for RRQ.
Okay.
So
I like RRQ. That's why I'm questioning some of the other aspects of the list.
I think now is the time for RRQ is the best way I can put it. Of like they've
Okay.
slowly changed over the 2 years. They've made like they've always kind of kept a core, and then they like rotate out a piece and rotate in a different piece. They haven't rushed this roster build. They've sort of naturally iterated towards this point, and I think this sort of lineup of RRQ is the strongest we've seen from them. You bring in Monyet, like Monyet is obviously someone I highly rate after working with him in 2023. I think he's unbelievably talented, and they just keep making good change after good change after good. These were like they're one of the few people who really managed to stand toe to toe to Gen.G last year. In my mind, that's one of the El Clasicos now of Pacific Valorant is RRQ versus Gen.G. It's always a good match, and it always seems to come up. But I do
Yeah.
think that I think now is the time for them. Like I said, I think this is where they really start to push. They've been playoffs both years, if I'm not mistaken. But now's the time where they really get up. They've been very close to international events before, and I think, especially with the addition of Warbirds as assistant coach, Warbirds was a fantastic coach when he was on Secret. Somebody I rated very highly in terms of how he prepared his team and that anti-strats he was able to provide. They were always very, very solid around. I think you add that on top of Ewok coaching, and I just think, yeah, I think this is the year for RRQ. I think this is the year where they break through that barrier and they make.
So what do you think of Kush? That's the real question.
I think he's very good. I think he's very, very good. I think he's sort of exactly what this team needed.
So you're high on Kush, is what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Always.
Okay. Good to know. So you're putting them in Makes an International?
Yeah.
Okay.
But then obviously we have T1.
Yeah, which is going here. I'm just saying that now.
Oh.
I'm off the charts with T1. I'll be honest. I am really I also, you have to bear in mind, I casted them win Red Bull Home Ground. They were nuts. Like, Meteor was just doing exactly what I expected him to do. Buzz was just having an absolute field day throughout this series. Okay, sure, maybe you're not that high on C9, but they did the same thing to Foot, who I've always said will be like... Yeah. I think if you're a new team, every year you're going to come up against Foot, who have changed like max 1 or 2 players. They come in with a core. They're really difficult to play against. They're really aggressive. They're in your face. If you can weather that storm, even after losing 13-3 on a map, I'm excited. And I just think, like, there's not a piece of this puzzle that I'm not excited for now. I'll say when I went into this tournament, I was like, oh yeah, Sylvan, that guy who was playing in China, like, I'm sure he's going to be a great addition. And I watched him play, and he was, like, really good sight holds, a great anchor for the team. I don't, like, this is the thing. I don't have a piece here that I don't like. I think that even, like, Izu, I think, has been fantastic. I think keeping him was great. Stacks and Buzz, I'm never going to doubt Stacks and Buzz to make it to internationals. So at minimum, they're here. I think, but in my mind, they're here.
I think I agree with you, to be honest. I think in my mind, this is the Korean super team of this year. At least on paper. Absolutely. This is where all the talent has sort of funneled its way to, realistically. I agree with you when you say there's no piece you don't like. All of these players are real standouts in their role. Put together and all, because obviously Stacks joined T1 last year, but he was out into IGL in English. You put a full Korean team together, full Korean coaching staff. That's massive. I also think the league being in Korea is such a boost for these Korean teams and these Korean organizations. You have home fans.
Well, especially T1. T1 are the Korean team in like other esports as well.
You walk to the 7-Eleven and you buy like sodas that's T1 branded. That's
I went into like just a random shopping mall and was walking around when I was in Korea for champs, and there was just a shop that the front of the shop was just like Faker jerseys. Like, that was the I don't even know what else they sold. It was just, it wasn't a T1 shop. It was just a shop, and then half of it was just T1. I was like, what? I was like, do they have the Valorant team? Oh no, they don't. Never mind. But yeah, I if they don't succeed with this team, I don't know if they ever will. Like, that's kind of how I look at it. I think if they're not making, like, realistically, right? When I say could win it all, I mean that they're going to be at pretty much every single international event, and they should be like challenging for the top of it. And that's what I believe with T1. If they don't make one of these internationals, I'm going to be going, oh shit, like, it's gone wrong. So
yeah, I definitely agree. they're so talented, and I think this is the year. I think you're right.
Right. So all of these are in the bottom, right? Talon,
Oh,
Secret, Zeta.
well, I suppose it has to be. I think the issue with this is when we look at Talon and we look at Secret. As far as I'm aware, they've not made any changes. Right? They're sticking with the roster from last year.
I guess technically Primi came in so late. Yeah. Like, he's not a change, but it's like we didn't see much of him in stage 2 anyway, right? We saw like the few games.
He joined for playoffs.
Couple of champions.
But this is the thing: is like Talon with this roster made champs last year.
Yes.
So now to put them not in the top half also feels very harsh. And I think Primi is absolutely insane. I think Primi is like a pro's pro, is how I would describe it. You speak to other pros about who they think the best player is. It's almost always Primi. Everybody rates. Everybody thinks he's absolutely dangerous. I mean, I think unless I've got this wrong, he was number 1 and 2 on the APAC ranked leaderboard.
Yeah, I think the only other person I know who did that was Scream. I think Scream did that once.
I think he's been top 1 every season. I mean, it is ranked, so take it with a pinch of salt. But he can see the damage.
It's still not. It's still tough.
Yeah, like we see how when Karan was brought in from ranked, and he's really being able to transfer that. I think Primi is primed and ready to do the same thing, especially if he has strong coaching staff in Frost, who I do think is a very, very good coach and will be able to teach him a lot about pro play. Like, I could see this team doing really well, but equally, it's hard to get excited about them when they've made no changes. When I compare them to who we already have in the top half, it's hard to put them sort of above them, I would say. DFM...
I think the other thing for me, though, is that I feel like other than like Primi coming in as this like superstar, I do feel like the rest of the team at times can be a little bit underwhelming. Like, I think the Governor definitely had his moments when we saw them at champs. I think I casted this game and they choked the shit out. Yeah, they did 4 rounds in a row at the end. And, like, Governor was insane. Like, he was sliding around, like, doing ridiculous things. Jit Boys was fantastic. Crew's always, like, one of those people I don't think's going to put up the craziest numbers, but still seems to have his impact on the server. My worry, though, is that sort of factor of, yeah, nothing's changed. It means you have more time, and potentially at kickoff you could do more damage because everybody else is going to be sort of reacting and changing. But I don't know if this team is going to do enough. So I don't know. This does feel harsh. The only thing would be is if we're going to swap them with one of these 3, which I don't think is impossible. Like, I'm not against swapping them with even DRX. It's just whether or not you believe that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think the thing is, like, when I compare them to DRX are always in the top. They're always there. Talon, like, made changes from 2023 to 24. And don't get me wrong, they had a good year in 24. But, like, they almost felt like they was like a sleeper pick to get their way into champs, right? Like, I don't think people were really expecting them to finish top 4, and they managed to do it. You know, fair play to them. I think they looked strong and they finished well. But I do think
it's also where they were, like, because you have to bear in mind that of the knockout match, I do wonder, did they play? Let's see, did they play RRQ just before that? Because in my mind, I was thinking like. I think even at the time, they did beat RRQ earlier in the season, so maybe it doesn't matter. But I was thinking whether or not they'd have beaten RRQ. So, I don't know. I'm happy to leave them there. I said we're still going to have to move stuff because...
Yeah, I could maybe see them in the top for sure.
Okay.
But I think it's just when I see these other teams make big upgrades again and again, and it's very easy to look at these teams and go, wow, they've upgraded. And Talon haven't done that. It's like, are they just going to be left behind by the improvements everyone else has?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Now, again, we're going to be looking towards Team Secret. Now, this is another team I believe we haven't seen, like, mass changes, at least from, like, what we've seen. Obviously, that was last year.
Yeah, they made changes coming into Split 2.
Yeah.
And I think they've kept the same team from
there. The thing is, you kind of look at their regular season matches, and it doesn't look bad, but I just don't... I think that, again... Them not making changes is a little bit of a surprise to me. Because if you're going to look to compete as one of the best, I don't think this team will do it. But I guess they just looked at the fact like, okay, we didn't do well or particularly well in that other regular season. But in the more recent one, it was like, okay, we beat T1. But that's the old T1, obviously. We beat Gen.G, so maybe we should just stick to what we've got. And then they lost to Talon in a close match.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, I remember they brought in Wild Oreo, and that guy was crazy. He was really good. I was really impressed by him. And I'm happy 2GE finally got his shot after being like a soap for so long with RRQ. But
Yeah.
I think this is a similar situation to Talon, where I'm seeing lots of other upgrades, and I'm seeing people really spending and pushing to be in that top half, and I don't see Team Secret doing that in the same way. Don't get me wrong, they had good results this year, but I just think the level of the league is upping. So it's hard to sort of place them very high up.
Yeah, it's hard
I
to
think
place
I would
them.
have to put them. I think I would have to put them in Battle of the Bottom, which is
Okay.
I mean, it's never fair, is it? It's a tier list, but I think it's hard to place them higher than that. I can't see strong, compelling reasons to put them higher than
And then we're just going to obviously end the video here because the next one is Zeta Division, and I don't want to upset anyone.
Yeah. I think I mean, I can't say I'm excited about this Zeta.
I'm excited for their coaching staff. Like, I know that sounds that's a real cop-out answer, but I think bringing in Jonta from Fennel, he's someone who's been around a long time. Like, even in Valorant, he was coach of FPX for a little bit, alongside Eric, or Doom Bros, as people know him. I think he's got a hell of a lot of experience, and I think him coming in makes this team a little bit more exciting. But again, they've kind of picked up, I think it's just the core of Fennel, right? So that's who they brought in with them, which the thing is, like, it's not even that they're not winning Ascension, they're not winning Japan.
I don't get me wrong, I think Riddle Order were a great team, but obviously Riddle Order didn't manage to make it as deep as Boom or as SPG, and Fennel were sort of a level below that. I think this has to be Battle of the Bottom, just because it's not. I mean, they still have Depp and Sugar Zero, who I think are great players, but they've been with this team a while and
beat DFM though.
They did beat DFM. I don't see them beating DFM this year though. I don't see it happening. I think it's just I don't see it like in Pacific where it matters and it's not the off season. I think DFM and be stronger, but it's just a team I'm not super hyped on. You know, they have big showy changes, and you look at how T1 have rebuilt and created something exciting. Zeta haven't managed to do that.
I think for me as well, it's like you lose Laz, who was a fantastic player, but also kind of like, I want to say the heart and almost everything of the team. Like, the guy was the leader. The guy was a lot of the time their best player. He was the face. He probably took pressure off of everybody because it's all going to be towards Laz, be it good or be it bad. So it's kind of like you lose that guy. I also was a bit surprised to see Hiroron and Uran go because these were the young players. And it's not like they were bad. So I would say if you were going to make these upgrades, I was going to look and go, okay, you need to pull in some like big names. So you need to go, okay, we're going to make this team like not just a Japanese team anymore. We're going to bring in some players from elsewhere. Because like their last games are like, oh, they had a close game versus Paperex. They beat out Talon. Sure, they lost to RRQ, and then they lost some games in close fashion, which is going to be infuriating. But I just look at this roster and I go, okay, clearly they're investing in that team, investing in that coaching staff, but I don't know if it's going to be better. In fact, that is why they're here. Now, you've got an even tougher task because I didn't do this. You put 7 teams in a top half out of 12, which mathematically doesn't work. So you've got to move someone down.
Okay. I think Gen.G or DRX are my candidates to come down. Maybe DFM, just because, DFM.
Wait, you're going to move Gen.G from here to here? You're going to move them down too?
No, I don't know, to be honest. I could see a world where I think you can move DRX down also. But,
okay.
A world where DRX doesn't finish in the top half? Like, it's so impossible for me to see that. To picture a league table and have DRX down there just feels insane. Like, I don't think my eyes can conjure that image. I mean, but then I think if this is Why have you made me do
Okay,
this
right now, if you were to put money on which of these two teams is gonna like make more of a run in playoffs, who's it gonna be? And does that mean that Simpreza Gaming are locked in your mind?
I think Simpreza are legit. I can't
Okay.
imagine a world where Simpreza don't come.
Right, let's move them up then. So it's between these two and maybe even this, which is wild.
Okay, I think I think maybe move DFM down. I'm excited for DFM and I like
So top half.
but they have a lot more to
Should I
prove.
just do this?
Yeah, that's fair. That seems better. That seems much nicer. Like I think with DFM, I think they're very talented, but it's going to be harder for them to make it stick than it is with DRX. DRX have a level of infrastructure around them and a level of support around them that will make it very easy for talented players to shine. DFM have a sort of cursed name where winning feels impossible no matter how good the players are every single time. And they've had a good offseason, but will they just crumble when they get on stage? I think DFM is. I think they could be good, but it's harder for them to get to that top half than it is DRX. I could see. Yeah, I think I can be happy with this, but I'm not going to sleep well tonight.
Yeah, well, you might. Luckily, the video is not going live for a little bit, so you'll be able to at least sleep for a couple of days before the bombardment begins. Is there anything that you're really upset? I feel like this upset you the most.
I really didn't want to put Boom at the bottom. I think that I can see two worlds with Boom. I can see a world where they struggle to break the playoffs like this because obviously they didn't win essentially. They did put up a good fight, but then you look at Boom when they're playing at their best and obviously bringing in Dust9, who I know is talented. Then I could easily see them breaking the top half and maybe not making an international, but going toe to toe to try and qualify for one. So it's really hard for me. I think it's a real coin flip for how Boom is going to turn out. Obviously, they have a lot to sort. Being an Ascension team moving to Korea, there's a certain level of sort of like bureaucracy which slows things down when it comes. They have to get an office sorted, they get visa sorted, and that takes time away from acting. So I do think that's not really going for them. When Nongshim, obviously, it's very easy. They're already based in Korea, so I think it's fair to leave them there. But it did hurt me. I'm very sorry, Boom. Please don't.
Wow. This now comes down to you guys. This is our list, or mostly big times, if you're really upset with it. But let us know in the comments down below what you think, a team that maybe you think needs to be further up, or a team that maybe needs to move a little bit further down. I don't know, whatever you feel. And of course, make sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you again next time. Goodbye.